Welcome back. Today, we're diving into some of the creepiest, real-life horror stories that will leave you looking over your shoulder. From eerie encounters in the woods to unsettling city neighbors, these tales are bound to chill you to the bone. Let's get started. The man in my window. Imagine being watched every night. Someone lurking, just a few feet away, hidden in the shadows, waiting for you to notice them. This is the chilling story of Reddit user Ethan, who shared one of the most disturbing encounters you'll ever hear on Reddit's LetsNotMeet thread. A story about a stranger who wasn't supposed to be there. Ethan starts the story by describing their first encounter with the man outside their window. It was a typical Saturday night, and they were relaxing in their bedroom, binge-watching a true crime series, until they heard an odd sound, almost like scratching. Assuming it was a tree branch or maybe an animal, they ignored it. But just minutes later, they heard it again, louder this time. Curiosity, and maybe a bit of annoyance, got the best of them. They pulled back the curtain to see. Nothing. The backyard was empty. The faint glow of their bedroom light didn't help much, and with a nervous laugh, they went back to their show. The next night, it happened again. This time, louder and more persistent. As they cautiously approached the window, a chilling realization settled over them. This wasn't random. Someone was deliberately making this noise, waiting for a reaction. But when they finally pulled the curtains back, again, nothing. They felt a wave of relief. Maybe it was just a raccoon or some animal, they thought. But then the dread settled in. Why was the noise always at the window? And why did it only happen at night? Days passed, and they tried to brush it off. Until one fateful night, they decided to take matters into their own hands. This time, they prepared a flashlight. As soon as the scratching started, they swung open the curtain and shined the light outside. And there he was, a figure, standing still, only a few feet from the window, staring back with hollow eyes. They froze, locked in a silent stare-off with this stranger. He didn't flinch, didn't move, just watched with an eerie smile. And then, as if it was the most normal thing in the world, he lifted his hand and waved. Heart pounding, they pulled back from the window, locked it, and hid in their bed, afraid to breathe. Who was this man? And why was he outside their window? The police were called that night, but by the time they arrived, he was gone. They filed a report, but without any leads, there wasn't much the police could do. After that night, Ethan did everything they could to protect themselves. Reinforced locks, security cameras, even a motion sensor floodlight. They thought it would be enough to deter him, and for a few weeks it seemed to work. The man didn't return, but as the Reddit post continues, we learn that this was far from over. One night, they were jolted awake by the sound of breaking glass. Their heart raced as they realized it came from their bathroom. Taking a deep breath, they gathered the courage to investigate. They found the bathroom window smashed open, but whoever had broken in was gone. They frantically checked the security footage, expecting to see the man outside the window again. But what they saw was far worse. In the video, they could see him sneaking in through the bathroom window just moments earlier, moving quietly through their home as if he belonged there. They immediately called the police, who arrived and searched the entire house. But the intruder was gone. No clues, no footprints, nothing to prove he'd ever been there. They double-checked the footage, watching his ghostly figure enter their home, and then disappear as if into thin air. To this day, Ethan doesn't know who he was or what he wanted. But as they ended their post, they shared a chilling detail. He left a note in the bathroom, scrawled on a piece of glass, with 3 words, "I'm watching you." And so, the mystery of the man in the window continues. Was he a stalker, a stranger, or something more sinister? No one knows. But next time you hear a strange noise outside your window, remember this story, because maybe you're being watched too. The haunting call in the wood. Sometimes, curiosity can be a curse. This story comes from a Reddit user who goes by Lost in the Woods, who shared an encounter so chilling that it left everyone who read it with goosebumps. Picture this. You're camping alone, surrounded by nothing but the deep, endless woods, and suddenly, you hear someone calling your name. But no one's supposed to be there. Lost in the Woods sets the scene. They were on a solo camping trip deep in the mountains, looking to escape the chaos of city life. The first day went peacefully, setting up camp, enjoying the silence, and even a few hours of fishing. But as the sun began to set, an eerie silence settled over the forest. At first, they didn't think much of it. It was the woods, after all. But then, just as the last light disappeared behind the trees, they heard it. A soft, distant whisper, calling their name. Their heart skipped a beat. They hadn't told anyone where they were going. No one even knew they were out here. They brushed it off as their mind playing tricks, until they heard it again. This time, closer. They called out, half expecting an answer, but nothing came. No footsteps, no rustling, just silence. The kind of silence that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. Feeling uneasy, they decided to head back to their tent and wait until morning. But the night was far from over. They lay there, staring at the thin tent walls, listening to every creak and crack outside. And then, it came again. Their name, now spoken as if someone was standing right next to the tent. Panic set in. They grabbed their flashlight, shone it outside, but the beam only cut through endless trees and darkness. There was no one there, or so they thought. As they turned off the flashlight, they caught something out of the corner of their eye. A faint figure, standing just at the edge of the trees, barely visible in the moonlight. They froze, heart pounding, as the figure didn't move. They just stood there, watching, silently. They tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was an animal, a tree trunk that just looked like a person. But then it moved, slowly swaying back and forth, still watching. Feeling like they had no choice, they called out again, "Who's there?" But the only reply was another whisper of their name, so soft it barely reached their ears. They knew then that they weren't alone, and whatever was out there was not human. The next few hours were a blur of terror. They huddled in their tent, clutching a flashlight, hoping that dawn would come soon. But just before sunrise, they heard footsteps outside, moving slowly around the tent, pausing, then moving again. Each step was deliberate, as if it was waiting for them to make a sound. The footsteps stopped right at the front of the tent. They held their breath, and then there was silence. After what felt like an eternity, dawn finally broke, and with the first light, they gathered the courage to peek outside. There was no one there, but as they packed up to leave, they found something disturbing. Right next to their tent, carved into the dirt, were footprints. Bare human footprints, circling the tent in a loop, as if someone had been walking around all night. They left the campsite as fast as they could, feeling watched all the way back. The story ends with them sharing one last detail. As they reached the trailhead, they looked back one last time and saw something, or someone, peeking out from behind a tree, just far enough away that they couldn't make out the face. But they swear it was smiling. To this day, Lost in the Woods has never returned to that campsite, and they'll never forget the whispers, the footsteps, and that strange, haunting figure that called their name. So, if you're ever camping alone in the woods and you hear your name whispered on the wind, don't answer, because you might just find out what's been watching you all along. The neighbor from down the hall. Living in the city has its perks. But the thing about living surrounded by strangers is you never really know who they are. Reddit user Ethan shared a story so unnerving that it made thousands of people think twice about the person living down the hall. It started as any typical day in the city. Ethan had recently moved into an older apartment building, the kind with long, dim hallways and a slow, creaky elevator that made you feel like you were in an old horror movie. The apartment was cheap, and they didn't mind the occasional flickering lights or the faint smell of mustiness. One night, as he was coming back from work, he noticed something odd. At the far end of the hall, a man was standing completely still, just staring at the wall. Ethan thought maybe he was drunk or lost, so he brushed it off. But the next night, the same man was there again, standing in the exact same spot, facing the wall, unmoving. He tried to ignore it, chalking it up to just one of those strange things you see in the city. But after the third night, it was hard not to feel uneasy. Every time he passed by, the man was there, just staring, not making a sound. He tried to make out his features. A pale face, thin, with dark circles under his eyes. It looked like he hadn't slept in days. One night, curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to ask the man if he was okay. But as soon as he got close, the man turned and walked away, down the stairs without saying a word. His footsteps were slow, dragging, and there was something unsettling about his walk, almost like he was in a trance. Ethan shrugged it off and went back to his apartment, locking the door, hoping it was just a one-time encounter. But then things took a disturbing turn. Around 2 a.m., he heard it, a soft knock on his door. He got up, peered through the peephole, and there he was, the man from the hallway, standing right outside his door, his face barely visible in the dim light. Heart pounding, Ethan stayed silent, hoping he would go away, but he didn't. He just stood there, breathing heavily, as if waiting for something. After what felt like forever, he finally walked away, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Ethan barely slept that night. The next morning, he went straight to the building manager to report it, but the manager's reaction was strange. Instead of seeming concerned, he just shrugged and muttered, "Oh, him. Yeah, he's harmless." Feeling uneasy, he pressed for more information, but the manager was vague, almost dismissive, like he was hiding something. Frustrated and a little freaked out, Ethan decided to let it go and hoped it wouldn't happen again. But it didn't stop. Every few nights, without fail, the man would appear, standing in front of his door, knocking gently, then standing still, listening. Sometimes he'd even try the doorknob, twisting it back and forth as if testing if it was locked. And then one night, things escalated. He heard scratching, like nails dragging down the wood, followed by the man's whisper. Ethan froze, every muscle tense. This wasn't normal. He called the police, but when they arrived, the man was gone. They checked the security footage, and what they saw made his blood run cold. The footage showed the man standing at the end of the hallway, staring directly at the camera, his head tilted slightly to the side. He wasn't just some harmless resident. He'd been watching him. But here's the kicker. The building manager revealed something shocking. This man had lived in the building years ago, but he had died in his apartment after being reported missing for weeks. No one knew he was dead until the smell started to fill the hallway. After his death, the strange knocking and sightings began. Every tenant who'd lived in Ethan's apartment had reported seeing him, hearing his knocks, his whispers. And the building manager? He'd heard it all before, and he'd come to believe that the man's spirit was stuck, endlessly wandering the halls, visiting the last place he'd lived, still trying to get in. The Reddit post ended with Ethan moving out, leaving behind the haunted apartment, but the chilling memory remains. So, next time you hear a knock at your door late at night, make sure you check who it is, because it might not be someone who's alive. Thanks for joining us for these spine-chilling tales. If you enjoyed these stories and want more horror content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for future updates. Stay safe and stay curious.